Many of us have stories that start with our mother, and I have a story that starts with my mother. She was a social worker and influenced my life tremendously and taught me that being a volunteer was probably one of the most important things I could ever do. So I started volunteering as a child with her. She would drag me around to all the different meetings she would go to, and I would do whatever needed to be done, pass out papers, pick up papers, throw papers away, whatever needed to be done. So when I grew up, I started my real volunteering, and the first thing I did was volunteer for Hadassah, which is the Women's Zionist Organization of America. And so I've been volunteering for Hadassah since 1964 when I got married, a long time ago. In January of 1992, I was asked if I would be interested in running for public office. And the reason I was asked is because through Hadassah, I was very involved in women's issues and, of course, in issues that related to Israel. And I had lots of good relationships with local politicians and our national politicians. So, not knowing what I was getting into, I said yes, and to make a long story short, I was appointed to fill an unexpired term on the Newcastle County Council. I had to make a commitment that I would run that November for the seat, which I did. And 4 elections after that and 15 years after that, I decided that I had made my contribution, which was an incredible part of my life, absolutely incredible part of my life. I concentrate on the things I knew, environmental reforms and getting library services out to the population, as much of the population as possible. And it was a time of great growth, not like now. And so we built 4 libraries. We added hours to the libraries, we added books, we added librarians, and I put in a lot of legislation that ensured that environmental protections were part of the county code, because the county decides on land use issues in the state of Delaware. That's how that works. So I had a project to plant trees. We planted 1 tree for every single person who lives in Delaware. It sounds like a lot of trees, but actually there are not that many people who live in Delaware. so it was somewhere around 800,000 trees that we planted, one way or the other. And I protected stream beds and all kinds of other wonderful things, and it was a great experience. All the time I was still volunteering for Hadassah, because I always felt that volunteer piece was such an important part of my life. And here's a little aside. I never hired anyone to work for me all the time I was on county council who did not have any volunteer experience in their background. And I found it was, of all the questions I would ask during an interview, that was the one that was most significant in terms of me choosing the person, and that's number one, but then choosing the right person. I found that if you had that kind of a heart and a spirit, then when you went into public service, which is what they were doing, which was basically sort of like volunteer work only for the government, that they just really wanted to help people, and that's why they did it, and that's a lot of what I was about. So it worked out very well. When the first piece of my environmental legislation got passed, and I was very worried about it because it was a tree protection clause, and I was told by the developers over their dead bodies, because it's expensive for them to buy these trees. You know, when you go out to a new development, you see these little sticks, and that's what the developers put up. And I said, you're not going to take down huge flourishing trees and put up one little stick for each huge tree that you take down. So what we worked out was that it would be a 3-for-1, and it would have to be at least 1 inch in caliber, so it had some chance of survival, and that was really, really, really controversial. It doesn't sound controversial now. It sounds like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, why not? But it was horrendously difficult, and so when that finally got passed and it passed unanimously, I was very happy. My mother, I could do no wrong. So she thought everything I did was fabulous. And since one of the volunteer activities I helped her with when I was a child was the League of Women Voters in Pennsylvania, when I got into office and started running, she was beside herself. She was so excited. And so I made a special t-shirt, Karen's mom, she wore her to everything. And at that point she was getting rather frail, but she still was my biggest supporter. Hadassah, she also was a big Hadassah supporter, and she's the one who told me to join Hadassah, that through Hadassah I could be involved in every issue that affected Jews everywhere. And she was right. She was right about that. So now I work for the Jewish Federation of Delaware, and it brings me in contact with a lot of wonderful people. I'm in this fabulous building, Community Services Building, and I have a chance to interact with everyone else who feels good about doing great things. I walk into this building in the morning, and I get on the elevator, and I know that there's a do-gooder on the elevator with me, and what a great feeling that is. So we have a lot of connections to the other organizations. We cooperate with them on issues of civil rights and discrimination, and it's turned out to be a really wonderful experience. My husband of almost 40 years died 4 years ago, and I learned something very interesting. He was an international expert on literacy and had done things all over the world. And when we came, I hope I'm going to get through this, when we came to doing his funeral, there were all sorts of people who wanted to speak, and it became clear to me that his relationship to the family and his relationships with his friends were among the most important things he did. And that a lot of this other stuff was wonderful, and of course we mentioned it, but it were those other things that really were the most lasting things about him. And in the Jewish tradition, we have an unveiling of a gravestone, usually a year after someone has died. Well, it was a year, and it was a year and a half, and it was almost 2 years, and I couldn't bring myself to do it. And I finally talked to a local rabbi, and I said, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do it. I don't know what to do. He said, it's a time for reflection, and so bring those close to you and talk about the values that your husband had and how those are going to be carried on. And that was it. That's just what I needed to know. And so that's what we did. We talked about his values and how, my daughter and my son and my grandchildren and friends, how they saw those values affecting their lives. It was an incredible experience. So my legacy, I hope that people volunteer and understand how important that can be for their own lives and their communities. And I certainly hope that people have good friends and close family relationships, and that the values that they have, and for me, those values really come from my religion. So it really has to do with being respectful, appreciating other people for what they do and what they can do, and trying to have a good influence. So it is so easy to get involved in Delaware. We're a very, very small state, and even if you're brand new to town, your next door neighbor, somebody you're going to meet, is going to be able to tell you of opportunities that are available. And you can get on the web and you can find all of this stuff. But this is a very open community in terms of bringing new people in and giving them opportunities to volunteer.